Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, Genesis. Genesis? What's that? Genesis TNG episode on It's All Been Checked Before. Get your own Genesis going. Follow us on Facebook. It's all been checked before. We're memeing it up out there and telling you what we're up to. Poking a little fun at ourselves, maybe at you. You might feel seen or attacked or both. Check us out. It's all been checked before on Facebook. And check this out. We're talking TNG Genesis on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your skeleton crew is here.
This is Steven.
Jimmy-Jerome, we are here to talk about the Next Generation episode, Genesis. First impression.
Genesis. It starts all crazy, and I enjoyed that, and I even referenced Facing the Enemy in my notes that, wow, where's this going? And then, to go to some of the tropes of this podcast from me is like, at first I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what it is. And I'm like, just tell me what it is. And then once it comes out what it is, it's disappointing. Not the worst, but it was just like, okay, well, that's weird. The episode was still a little weird. I appreciated, but overall, I didn't love it. There were definitely some interesting things about it, but can't say that I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like, how dare they do a Next Gen episode called Genesis and not follow up to the Wrath of Khan and all that?
Right.
Like, don't name it that then. But yeah, I like that we had Ogawa, and I like that we had Barclay, and that's I mean, there were some fun bits, but yeah, it wasn't as bad as some of the episodes this season, but I wouldn't say it's a strong episode either.
Yeah, I was hoping for, like I said, I was hoping for a better resolution to the mystery, but we got what we got.
We started with a sick day montage
Mm-hmm.
where we find out that Ogawa and Barclay are in this episode. We find out Ogawa's pregnant. Yay. We find out that Barclay uses the Starfleet medical database, which is essentially WebMD for the 24th century.
I wrote Space WebMD,
Yeah.
Which is always
that's the official Starfleet medical database, but same effect.
Yes. And did she just administer her own pregnancy test? I mean, I imagine they're better in the future.
Probably.
Because Beverly was surprised, but I guess you don't have to go to a doctor, I guess, to get a pregnancy test.
Well, and also sickbay isn't just Ogawa and Beverly.
That's true, too. That's a good point.
I mean, Beverly's the chief medical officer. I don't think you bother her with pregnancy tests, generally.
That's true. She may have gone and talked to Salar. Is it Salar? Is that?
Yeah. Wait. Yes. I think so. And even more important than Ogawa being pregnant, Spot apparently has been pregnant, and we have not gotten to enjoy Spot's whole pregnancy. We're at the end of the pregnancy. We didn't even know she was pregnant.
Yeah, and I wrote, where did Spot find a male cat? And then they answered it. There's a bunch of other male cats on the ship, which
I had a problem with that because they mentioned they mentioned there were 12 male felines. Mm-hmm. I get that Spot could get out of the quarters. That makes sense to me. Because obviously they don't lock the doors and Spot should be able to activate it. Although you'd think you'd set your door to not activate for a cat. Like, I feel like Data should adjust the settings for the door. But only 12 male cats. Unless you assume that there are a lot more female cats than male cats in the Enterprise D, that makes me think there's about 24, 25 cats on board. There's 1,000 people. Only 25 cats, that bothers me a lot. I think they're way underutilizing the cats. There should be at least 200 cats on a crew of 1,000.
And are there a lot of them running loose like that?
Well, if Spot runs loose, then they all run loose. Which also bothers me that we've gone through how many episodes of the show and not seen random cats wandering the halls. What is up with that? What is up with that?
Opportunities missed.
Apparently, they don't fix cats in the future.
Yeah, that too.
I guess the decks are all self-cleaning, so you don't need to mutilate their genitals.
Somebody around my age was talking to them, and they were talking about their mother, their cat as a kid getting pregnant, and they let it run around and it got pregnant, and they were like, yeah, well, being spayed and neuter wasn't as big a thing as it is now. Now it seems like just a basic thing that happens. Obviously, it doesn't happen enough because there's still a lot of cats out there, but a lot of cats on the streets or whatever. But yeah, I agree.
I also could see that being inhumane to fix them, like in the future, being like, we're being kind of cruel fixing these animals. So then you have to limit what you're doing and everything. But again, if there's 12 male cats that aren't fixed, and maybe what Data meant was he didn't specify that there were 12 male cats that weren't fixed. He said there's 12 male cats. Maybe what he meant was there's 12 that aren't fixed and there's 250 that are fixed. And then the ratios feel a little more logical.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that Data was going to give his pregnancy thoughts to Ogawa because he's already been through it. Talk about not reading the room. That was funny.
Cool. Just to go back to Barclay, as a super hypochondriac myself, or I guess I call myself a catastrophic hypochondriac because I never think I have a cold. I think I have something that's going to kill me. But then I was like, you know what? If I was Barclay, I'd find excuses to see Beverly too. You know, so
I mean, Barclay is an interesting character.
Yes.
I was trying to look up if this was a series wrap on him. I'm guessing it is because while we usually get Barclay-centric episodes, and this wasn't, it would make sense that we're not going to see him again. Hang on. He's only in 5 episodes of the series. So, yeah, this was his final episode of the series. But, like I said, he's in 6 episodes of Voyager, and he is in the second film, First Contact. So we're not done with Barclay. We're just done with him for the run of The Next Generation. And he reprised his role as Barclay in Star Trek Elite Force 2, a video game that came out in 2003. So,
oh, right.
Yeah. So, in terms of Ogawa,
there was a point where I thought it was a Barclay holodeck app.
No holodeck in this one. So, Ogawa was also in a video game, but yeah, she was in 16 episodes of the series. She was in 16 episodes, and she does have one more episode left. She will be in the series finale, and she'll be in the first 2 films. So we're definitely not done with Ogawa either.
And as always, I know we think she was underused. She's a fun character whenever she's around.
Yeah. I mean, she is underused like all female characters on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. To go back to Barclay real quick, we found out he's a cat dad. He knows all about cats. He's into cats. So another one of the
he has cats.
But he's into it.
Yeah, we don't know if he has them, but he's the only human Spot likes. So that's good, I guess. That makes me like Barclay a little more.
Mm-hmm.
There's a rogue torpedo, which is an excuse to get Picard and Data off the ship, apparently.
Yeah. Well,
so that somebody can come back to the mystery.
It goes off, and Picard goes, Worf, you need to analyze your guidance system. And me and Worf are both like, you think? Yeah, I know I need to analyze this guidance system, clearly. But
they said the Enterprise can't follow it through all the asteroids or whatever, but can't the Enterprise just wait for it to come out the other side? Might have to send a shuttle.
Right. Yeah, something.
It's not like the asteroid. It's going to take years to get through the asteroids. Yeah. Which, again, makes no sense because I guess sending Data might make sense, but for Picard to go with him doesn't make a lot of sense. If anything, it's Worf's mistake. He should have to go fetch it. Threw the ball outside of the yard. He should have to go get it.
Yeah, he knows all. Yeah, and he's the expert on it. Yeah.
I did like his frustration, though it seemed like a little much. Like I felt like he'd grown a bit more than this, which I guess then they explain as we go forward. He blows off his lunch date with Troy, which I'm like, that seems real out of character. I mean, I could see him being upset, but to just blow off his lunch date with Troy seemed too much.
And then,
Troy comes anyway, as she should.
Mm-hmm.
Troy drinks with 2 hands, very Donald Trump-like. For the Patreon viewers, here you go.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Which is the first hint that something's wrong with her. Because why would you drink with 2 hands?
Right. And then Worf eating with his bare hands is just gross.
I think that's just as normal.
It makes sense here.
I think that's just as normal.
Klingon. Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that the food wasn't moving is a step up for Worf.
That's true. This is true.
Is Worf making a nest when he rips his bed apart onto the floor?
Between that and whatever Troy's doing there, I'm just like, what the hell is this episode? I don't know where we're going, And I really like the episode at this point. I was into it, and then kind of starts to go downhill from there.
I thought it had something to do with Spot being pregnant because Barclay said she was going to find a cool dark place or whatever to give birth to hide away. So when Worf ripped up his bed and made a nest, I was like, oh, is he like pregnant somehow? But then he didn't like find a dark place. He just did in the middle of the floor. And that was like, okay, maybe that's parallel's not there, which it wasn't. So the fight over the thermostat on the bridge, that didn't feel completely out of character.
No.
Or too big a red flag.
No.
But Troy was in command, so she should pick the thermostat settings. That's the way it works, right?
That's true. That's true.
Troy takes a bath in her uniform. That's a little bit out of character.
Yeah, and I was worried I thought they were just going for, let's get Marina Sirtis in a wet t-shirt contest. But they didn't really go that angle. It was just, then they got to where they're going, the amphibian. But yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, and when Worf came in and was sexually assaulting her before he bit her neck, and that was disturbing. I did not enjoy that.
Well, and then afterwards, he's just walking around sickbay like nothing happened. I'm like, shouldn't he be in restraints or in the brig or both? Something?
Yes. It really.
And that's what I was like. Is everybody crazy in this episode? And they were for the most part.
Yes. But yeah. Crusher sure took a while to notice Worf's neck. I noticed it long before she did. I felt like she should have picked up on it.
Yeah, I agree.
And then he basically spit acid in her face.
Yeah, what the hell? And that's why he should have already been restrained.
Well, I thought we were in the movie Alien at that point.
Yeah.
But obviously we weren't.
Yeah.
And did Barclay later in the episode, at this point, was acting weirder than usual. He was so hyper. Even I was bumping out. I guess when you have a character like Barclay, how do you get even weirder that it's noticeable? And he really had to go. Dwight Schultz really had to go all out to make it noticeable.
Barclay's behavior, is that related to a spider in any way?
I guess it moves around the web a lot.
It didn't. I guess so.
So Riker was it was weird that Barclay was so hyper because Riker was so slow and reserved. Honestly, what it reminded me of was when Kirk split in half. Riker reminded me of the slow, wimpy Kirk. Yeah, in that scene where he's basically like, Jordy, you've got this. You handle it. Let me know how it goes.
He has that talk with Ogawa, and I can't remember exactly the conversation. But then, actually, my takeaway from this was it looked like Ogawa was limping out of there, which I don't think had anything to do with her. Well, maybe it did, because she ends up being Cro-Magnon, right? Or she ends up devolving back to that too. So maybe that is what they were doing, but because I don't think
maybe the actress just hurt themselves.
Beginning of the episode or the end. Or that, yeah.
So Picard and Data then come back. At this point, before we really find out what's going on, we just leave the Enterprise and leave them to their fate. Now we come back to Picard and Data finding the Enterprise D spinning in space. That was creepy. But as creepy as that was, well, I know they're having problems getting their sensor readings, so they couldn't just stay away. But they just should they dock? And then if they, instead of calling for help and waiting for another ship to arrive, and if they do dock, don't they at least wear spacesuits?
I thought that was weird.
Ships and viruses and stuff.
And I also thought, isn't there anybody else in Starfleet that heard from somebody on the Enterprise or didn't hear from someone on the Enterprise and was like, what's going on over there? You never got back to me on my message or whatever, but maybe not.
Yeah, Riker was going to call Starfleet Command and then didn't. I just feel like Picard should have worn a mask or something, at least a mask. We know this living through a pandemic, but really it should have been the full suit. And so when we found out he was sick, I'm like, of course he is. He didn't take any precautions. What a dummy.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. On that note, them going through there, is there anything Data's tricorder can't tell us? As much as the sensors, we talk about they can't read it, they can read it. His tricorder was picking everything up, and he was just breaking it down very, very quickly. He's quickly it's composed reptilian DA. She's going through her DNA is in a state of ribocytic faults, where genetic codes are being resequenced and her cells are mutating as a result. That feels like it's hard to tell if the tricorder is telling that or he's deducing that or a little of both, but whatever, that's good information. That's better information than the ship's sensors get us half the time. It also reminded me of a Lower Decks episode in the way that it obviously involve Lower Decks people like Barclay and Ogawa, but also some of the episodes of Lower Decks where everyone turns into a zombie or a werewolf kind of a thing. And then, they're able to fix it at the end of the episode. And they did it here. So I guess I'm calling a Lower Decks episode, but now that I think about it, I guess Lower Decks is just doing a TNG episode where everyone's mutated, but by the end, we fixed it. We figured it out.
I mean, I'm sure this episode influenced some Lower Decks for sure. The creepiness is becoming Data come on board. The reptilian skin shedding. I mean, they never really explain why each picks a different evolutionary moment, which is kind of weird, but Mutant Troy, I didn't even recognize Troy at first when she was amphibian. That was weird.
Yeah, that was really weird. I kudos to them on the makeup. I didn't look to see if they got any nominations, but that was
I didn't either. The main power's off, which includes a lot of the lights, almost none of the panels, and the turbo lifts are still on. Like the doors aren't working, but the elevators are.
Yeah, that seemed weird.
We see Riker. He's all weird and hairy. Slight, like 5% hairier than normal, I would say.
Yeah, and I for whatever reason, again, I was focused on weird things in the episode because it was a weird episode. But if you go back and watch that scene where he's got his hand against the glass, he's flipping off the camera. He's giving us all the bird as the werewolf, which I didn't know if that's
I didn't even see that.
He's not a werewolf. He's de-evolving.
Sure.
Speaking of which, when they said de-evolve, I was like, isn't it devolve? But it is de-evolving because I guess devolve is to having had power transferred or delegated to a lower level, especially from central government to local or regional administration. So I learned that just now. So
interesting.
I should not question the Trek writers.
Well, I mean, they've given you ample reason to question them in the past, so.
On this. Yeah.
Picard?
Yes, this is.
Data can tell Picard's going to become a lemur or a marmoset. Were you disappointed we didn't get to see that? Because I sure was.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And I thought, again, it's another part where I thought Patrick Stewart was working real hard, kind of, and I thought, Shatner season 3. But I think Patrick Stewart was doing a better job of conveying that. Like he was working real hard for an episode that just I shouldn't. Shatner, the joke is you can see how hard he's working to try and pump up these scripts. Stewart, right. I think he's working hard in the sense he's doing really good work, but in the service of not a great episode. But I thought he did a good job of conveying that.
You're not wrong. But we then see Spot's kittens, which almost completely redeems the whole episode.
Oh yeah.
Like
yes, I was very excited, and then we see poor Spot has become an iguana.
Well, it was disappointing Scott was becoming a iguana. My daughter, Zoe, watched this episode with me, and she's like, I know that Spot because they're wearing a collar, and that's why your pet should always wear collars.
She's not wrong.
But the kittens are uninfected. It did bother me a little bit. Look, I know it's an emergency, and I would probably be complaining the opposite way if they did stop to feed the kittens. Dare you not stop and feed the kittens? How dare you leave them crying and hungry 24 hours after being born?
They're sentient life forms.
Whoa! Sorry. We got to see Spider Barclay. The fact that they did not, the fact that they did not put out any action figures for this episode is highly disappointing, considering all the random weird action figures they have. Yeah. My only thought is most of the action figures they're putting out in the Playmates later lines were basically like the same characters redressed. And the mutations would have made them a lot more complicated to make. But still, I want Spider Barclay and Monkey Ogawa and all of those. I'm sure I could probably find at this point somebody 3D printing customs. But that happens a lot.
Yeah. I usually hate the jump scares in movies because I think they're overdone. But I thought the Spider Barclay jump scare was a good one. It got me. I jumped. Even though I wouldn't say it was telegraphed, but you knew something was coming. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, we kept seeing those spider webs, and I was like, one of them's got to be a spider, but I honestly just assumed they wouldn't show it because it would be too complicated. But the spider Barclay, that was creepier than I could picture.
I agree.
We only saw Worf shadowy at first. We only saw Worf shadowy at first. At first, I thought he was Groot with the big head stuff, but then Picard electrocutes him. Isn't that pretty deadly? I mean, I know he's fighting for his life, but that seems a little excessive. Like, it's surprising Worf survives it.
Yeah, and I thought Picard's reaction was, "Oh yeah, I'm okay," and then what he left unsaid because he was still in that form was, "Oh, by the way, I might have killed Worf, but I'm too scared to look and check." That's what I thought.
Yeah, he did take it a little too casually that he killed Worf, almost killed Worf.
Mm-hmm. This did get an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Individual Achievement Makeup for a Series. In fact, TNG got 10 Emmy nominations that year for that. So
it was a very popular show.
Yeah. They did win an Emmy. This episode did win an Emmy Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Sound Mixing for a drama series.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Seems okay. Okay. So at the end of the day, it was Beverly's fault. She caused the virus because she was messing with Barclay's DNA to fix something he had. We never saw Beverly deformed. They mentioned she was deformed. They mentioned they had to put her in a coma so they could have facial reconstructive surgery, but then she just was totally fine with those scars. Was that a lack of budget?
Right.
Was she disappointed, perhaps, that she didn't get? I feel like she should have been disappointed that she didn't get to get the makeup like the rest of them, but maybe she didn't want it.
This was her one directing credit for all of TNG, so maybe that was why we didn't get to see
I didn't even see it was directed by Gates McFadden. You're right. That's why they took it off the table so early. Early
on, there were some different angles and shots that we hadn't seen before, so I give her credit for that. I mean, I guess if you're doing a horror episode, that makes sense, but there were some different views. I can't remember which room it was. She decided to just go do an overhead shot, which I thought it might have even been the ready room for that matter, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, she had a couple of interesting shots there. So I don't think she necessarily did a bad job as a director. I thought
she didn't. At
least some interesting shots.
It was written by Brennan Braga, one of the regulars, who was already working on the series finale in the film at this point. So
yeah.
They named the disease after Barclay. But I mean, mental health could never be made light of and joked, but Troy saying, "I better clear my calendar for the next few weeks" was, Yeah.
I had a similar reaction. I know it's a funny joke, but yeah.
Yeah, also kind of inappropriate.
Yes, yeah. Especially as she shouldn't be sharing that information with everybody else either, as his counselor.
Well, I think Troy was right there. And this was just like, they named the disease after him. Good for him, I guess.
True. Yeah.
I didn't think that was that out of place, but well. The only fashion note I have is, what did you think of Worf's PJs and his bedtime look?
Oh, I must have blocked those out.
The scene where he was making a nest, he had PJs and his hair was all down.
Oh, yeah. They were all right. Like everything else in this, so a little crazy. I recall, right?
Yeah. My alternate episode is, I do think Patrick Stewart should have kept his mutated crewmen and made them the X-Men.
Yeah. That's good.
Amphibian Troy could have been like Toad with the long tongue, and I don't know, Barclay. Yeah. I don't know. I guess Worf would have been Beast. I don't know who else would have been who.
Oh, yeah, right.
Sorry, not Worf. Riker. Riker would have been Beast. Yes. I don't know what Worf would have been.
My alternate would have been, they just think they're de-evolving, and so it's like a Space Madness episode, essentially.
Makes sense.
There's a really good image of Gates McFadden with Barclay in his makeup. If you go out and search for images of this episode on the old Google, there's a really good picture of that. It's pretty gross, but yeah. Anyway, if you're out there,
yeah, I will pass on gross personally.
Not a lot to get deep into, I don't think here. I don't think.
I mean, I'm sure there are things that we could be discussing that we're not, but it just doesn't feel all that deep. It felt like, again, like you said, an opportunity to show off the makeup skills, and we're at the end of the series and we got to whip something out. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a monster episode. It's almost a Monster of the Week episode, except everyone's a different monster.
It's just a shame they never give Beverly a good episode, and then when it was Gates' turn to direct, she also didn't get a good episode.
Yeah.
So who was your annoyance in this episode?
As it turns out, it's not his fault, but Worf, I didn't like his biting and the way he ate and any of that stuff. I just didn't like it. So
I got to go with Picard for not taking any precautions when coming back on the ship.
that's fair. That's fair. And for insisting that he go on the away mission as well.
True. And who are you having a drink with?
I was thinking about Reg, but I think I'm going to go with Agawa, but it's going to be after she has the baby. Just
after they've restored her, or while she's still a primate?
After they've restored her. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Several months from now.
I mean, I honestly thought you would take my pick, but I have to go with Spot's kittens. I mean, they're very thirsty. They need something to drink, so I'm gonna make sure they get something to drink, and then I'll have a drink with them.
Yeah, that's my usual go-to. I went right back.
I mean, they were adorable kittens.
Yes, that makes more sense.
Let's start with last week for ranking the episode, our last Next Gen episode, where Troy has the empathic flashes after the crewman commits suicide. What do you think, better or worse?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. Oh, wow. That's
good question without an easy answer.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'll go with Troy as Columbo over Crusher as Quincy, MD.
Okay. So we're saying this is worse?
I think so.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close, but
yes,
I don't have a strong argument. I'll just go with you.
Yeah.
Below that's Descent Part 2, which I did not enjoy.
You really did not like that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I could go either way.
Yeah. So for reference, below that is Masks.
I would go
which
with
also wasn't good. You want to go above Masks for this one?
Even though I don't, I didn't love this episode. But yeah, I think I'd go above.
Let's put it above Descent Part 2 just because there's some redeeming qualities about this one. Like you said, the first 15 minutes, and we got Barclay and Ogawa, and Descent Part 2 is just disappointing all around.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely. So we're putting it number 11 of 19 so far.
Wow.
Well, I don't think it deserves it, I think.
Yeah.
So
it just makes me think, wow, this really hasn't been that big a season.
It really hasn't. They dropped the ball totally for this final season. I mean, there have been full of good ones. Like we had Lower Decks. Pegasus was good. Parallels and Dino himself were pretty good. But then immediately you're going to Liaisons and Gambit Part 1 and 2, which weren't great. And we're only at like number 6 and 7 on the rankings. It's not promising. Well, next week, we're going back to the station instead. Carnassian woman named Natima Lang, who was once a flame of corks, visits the station under dubious circumstances. So we'll see if that's any better.
Interesting. That scene sounds intriguing.
I mean, I am all for fork romance. Let's bring it on. Until then, live long.
You filthy animal, and prosper.
You just said that because it's Christmas time here.
I'm going to... Yeah, that definitely, it was in the zeitgeist.
Even though we're releasing this in like July.
Right. Okay. Christmas in July.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?